Hey, what's up guys? This video is the second part of the section 3.1 graph linear equations when it is in standard form. So if you guys remember my first video, let me just take this away from the screen here. I show you guys what is a linear parent function and have to graph using a t-table or a regular table with the inputs and outputs. Also remember that you have to understand when you have a linear function just by looking at the equation. So let's look at the bottom of the screen just to know when a function is linear. So when x is not part of the denominator in a fraction, you can say it's linear. When x and y are not multiplying another variable or each other, it's a linear function. And when x has an exponent of 1. So all those things need to happen at the same time to say that it's linear. Once again, you guys can have other types of functions. For example, a quadratic function, that's not a linear function. Obviously, it's going to be a U-shape, and you guys will learn that later on in your Algebra 1 class. But another type of function is a cubic function. It's an S-shaped function. We have absolute value functions, square root functions. So there's a lot of functions out there. But you have to know when you have a linear function. And this video is going to show you guys when that function, linear function, is in standard form and have to graph it when it is in standard. Let's go ahead and understand what is standard form. Now here it says that one form of a linear equation in standard form. There's actually three different forms that you guys are going to learn. This is the first one, standard form. The second one is called the slope-intercept form, and the third one is called the point-slope form. So just little by little, I'm going to show you guys each form. But let's go ahead and understand standard form. Standard form looks like this right here. You guys have ax plus by equals c. A, B, and C are integers, which means they're negative, positives, but they're not fractions and they're not decimals. Now, here's the thing though. A has to be greater than or equal to 0. Now, I say that A has to be an integer, but it cannot be a negative integer or a negative number. It has to be a positive or equal to 0. So this one here has to be positive. This one here can be negative or positive, so you can have a minus or a plus. And this number here doesn't have a variable. It's going to be just a number, which is a constant, and it can be negative or positive. So that is the standard form. X and y are on the same side of the equation, so that's another thing that you have to look for standard form. And the constants is on the other side of the equal sign. So, oh, and something else, x is always before the y. That's usually how we write down standard form. So ax plus by equals c, your constant. A linear equation can be represented on a coordinate graph. The x-coordinate of the point at which the graph of an equation crosses the x-axis is an x-intercept. Now, when you guys actually graph the linear function, we can use two things. One is the x-intercept to know where the line is going to cross the x-axis, and the second one is the y-intercept. And let me just keep reading here on the paragraph. The y-coordinate of the point at which the graph crosses the y-axis is called the y-intercept. So you can use those two intercepts to graph your line. Without using a t-table, just like the previous video, I show you guys how to construct one. When you have inputs, you guys need to find the outputs. Without doing all that work, you can use these two things, the x-intercept and the y-intercept, which are just 2 points. So it's a little bit faster than just doing a t-table, a little bit less work, but like I said guys, in linear functions, you can use a t-table to graph it, but when your teacher asks for the x and the y-intercept, well, let's go ahead and use the standard form. So the x-intercept, one more time. When the line crosses the x-axis, you notice the blue line here, it touches the x-axis, intersects the x-axis at this point. So this point is called the x-intercept. Now there's a couple ways you guys can say for the x-intercept. You can say x equal to -4 and the y-coordinate equals to 0. So that's your point, -4, 0. That is your coordinate of the x-intercept. You can also say x equals -4. When you ask for the x-intercept, you can say x equals -4. The y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis right here in the graph. They intersect. So this point right here is 0, 2. That is the coordinate of this point. So you guys can say the y-intercept is 2, or you can say, oh, the coordinate of the point is 0, 2. So that's the y-intercept. Now, how do you actually find the x and the y-intercept? To find the x-intercept, you're going to let y equal to 0. So in this form, remember that a, b, and c are going to be integers. They're going to be numbers. You are going to substitute, to find the x-intercept, you're going to substitute 0 into the y. So 0 goes in there, and you are going to solve for x. When you guys want to find the y-intercept, you're going to substitute 0 to x, so x equal to 0. So you put a 0 there, you let x equal to 0, and you solve for y. After you guys find those x values and the y values, the x-intercept and the y-intercept, you are going to plot those points, and then you connect the points. So let's go ahead and try some examples where you guys find the x and the y-intercept, and then we're going to graph using those intercepts. So here we're not actually graphing. The graph's already made for us, but we want to find what are the x and the y-intercepts. So that's this first example. So let's understand the graph first. Let's look at this one here. The line is going downhill like this. It's going down from left to right. I'm going to plot the points where it crosses the x-axis. So I'm looking at the x-axis, I'm looking at the line, so they intersect right here. So I'm going to put a point in that spot, and I'm going to say this is my x-intercept. Then you guys are going to find the y-intercept. So the y-axis is the one vertical. The line is going through the y-axis right there. So my y-intercept is this point. So let me label that right here, y-intercept. Now you guys are going to give me the coordinates of the point. So let's start with the x-intercept. My x-intercept will be, I'm going to use parentheses here, and let me just underline x-intercept. The coordinate of that point is at 2, 0. So notice, you guys go 2 to the right, and you don't go up or down. So it's 2, 0. Or another way that you guys can say what is the x-intercept, you can say x equals +2. So there's a couple ways you guys can write down your answer. You can write as a coordinate 2, 0, or x equals to 2. Now notice what the y equals to. Y equal to 0. When you're looking for the x-intercept, that's what it is. The y is 0, and you just need to find the x value. Now for the y-intercept, so y-intercept here, you guys are going to find the coordinate of the point. So the coordinate is 0. You don't go left or right, but you guys go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So my point, it's at 0, 4. Or another way you guys can say your answer is y equals to 4. So the y-intercept, y equal to 4, or as a coordinate, you have 0, 4. Notice what the x equals to. The x equal to 0. And that's what needs to happen. For the y-intercept, x has to be 0. For the x-intercept, y has to be 0. So that's it. You guys found the two intercepts where the line crosses the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So let's try the next one. The next one, you guys have a blue line and it's going uphill. Notice it's going up like this. So when you guys look for the x-intercept, here's the x-axis, here's the actual line, it crosses right there. So let me just label that again. And for this one, I'm just going to put here x-int, x-intercept. Okay, so that's just an abbreviation, x-int. And the coordinate of that point is at -3. You guys go to the left, 1, 2, 3. So that's -3, 0. or we can say x equals to -3. For the y-intercept, well, the y-intercept is right here, y-I-N-T, y-intercept. So my y-intercept will be at 0. Remember, x has to be 0. So let me count how many steps I go up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the origin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 0, comma, 5. Or we can say y equal to 5. So that's the y-intercept. We know where the line crosses the y-axis and the x-axis. Now here's the big idea. If you guys know what are the x and the y-intercepts, you can plot the points. You just put the points and then you just connect the points, making a line. And that's graphing in standard form. So let's try that. So actually, before we graph, I want you guys to understand how to rewrite or write an equation in standard form. Notice that I have 3 different examples here, 3 different equations. All of them are not in standard form. This one is kind of in standard form, but one thing that you guys cannot have in standard form are fractions. So here we have to get rid of fractions. X cannot be negative, so we're going to have to get rid of the negative. Over here, we need the x and the y on the same side, but I do have an x on this side, so I'm going to have to get everything on the same side, the x and the y on the same side. And the constant has to be on the other side of the equation. Now this one here, the x and the y are not even on the same side. So let's do that first. Let's write the equation in standard form, and then I'm going to show you guys how to graph those equations when you have standard form. So first of all, let's get the x and the y on the same side for this equation. 4y equals -2x plus 16. This -2x, you guys send it to the other side. I want that on the same side of the y. So I'm going to put a line under the equal sign. I'm going to do the opposite of the -2x. So I'm going to add 2x here, add 2x over here. So when I do that, I'm going to have positive 2x plus 4y, and on the other side, I have 16. So I'm just going to rewrite that. 2x plus 4y equal to 16. Now, the x and the y are on the same side. I'm just checking my equation here. The constant is on the other side. So notice 16 is on the other side. And the x is not negative. So that's good. That's what we need in standard form. And we don't have fractions. That's great. We cannot have fractions in standard form. That's the standard form. I noticed that sometimes when we have different books in school, when you guys have a different publisher, they like to rewrite the standard form in simplest form. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that right now, because maybe your teacher is going to ask you guys to simplify the equation. So what does that mean? Well, notice that every number here, 2, 4, and 16, you can divide by 2. You can simplify by 2. So you guys can do that. If your teacher tells you, you know what, you don't have to reduce, you don't have to simplify, then don't do that in class. But if you guys are asked to simplify, so let's go ahead and do that. So my simplest form, I'm going to divide by 2. So I'm going to divide 2 by 2, 4 by 2, and 16 by 2. So when you divide, we get 1x plus 2y equal to 8. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So like I said, guys, one answer can be in the simplest form. So you guys can divide by in this case by 2. Or if your teacher doesn't ask you to simplify, you guys can leave your answer as 2x plus 4y equals 16. Let's go ahead and do the next one, okay? The next one, you guys do not have all the x's on the same side. Here's an x, here's an x. We do have an x and the y here on the same side, but this one has to go on to the other side. So I'm going to do the opposite here. I'm going to subtract 2x so I can get all the x's on the same side. So when I do that, I have 5x minus 2x, that's 3x, plus 3y. On the other side, we know this cancels, and you guys bring down the 15. So we have 3x plus 3y equal to 15. Now, I'm going to ask you guys to simplify, to reduce the equation. So all of those numbers, 3, 3, and 3, you can actually simplify. You can divide by 3. So my simplest equation will be 1x plus 1y equal to 5. And let me just show you guys so you know where that equation comes from. You can divide everything by 3 here. So notice I'm dividing by 3. And my simplest equation is x plus y equal to 5. Now the next one, it has fractions, and the x is negative. So first of all, we have to get rid of the fractions. If you guys have fractions in an equation, one way to get rid of them, you can multiply by the lowest denominator, or the lowest common denominator. And I'm saying the lowest common denominator, I'm saying that because the denominators are not the same. If the denominators are all the same, you just multiply by that same denominator. But right now, the lowest common denominator for 2 and 3 is 6. So I'm going to multiply each fraction by 6. So this one by 6, this one by 6, and this one by 6. So I'm going to put here LCD so you remember that's the lowest common denominator. I'm going to cross simplify. So 2 goes into 6 3 times. And I'm going to multiply the negative x. Remember, we have a negative x times 3. So that's going to be negative 3x. Over here, I'm going to simplify 3 and the 6. So 3 goes into 6 2 times. And I'm going to multiply y times 2. That's a positive 2y. And on the other side, I'm going to multiply 1 times 6 is 6. Okay, now you guys notice that a is negative. So we have to change that to positive. To do that, you just have to multiply by a negative 1. Because if you multiply this negative 3 times a negative 1, it's going to become a positive 3. But if you multiply this one by negative 1, you have to multiply this one by negative 1 and this one by negative 1. So what that means, you have to multiply everything by negative 1. So you're going to distribute. Now notice what I did with the parentheses. The whole thing, the whole equation is inside the parentheses. So you distribute the negative 1, distribute, and distribute. So when you multiply by negative 1 times negative 3, that's positive 3x. Negative 1 times positive 2, that's negative 2y. And on the other side, you guys multiply negative 1 times 6 is negative 6. And that's it. You guys have the answer. If you notice the 3, the 2, and the 6, you guys cannot divide by a common divisor or a common number. You guys can divide the 3 and the 6. 3 goes into 6, but it doesn't go into the 2. So you cannot divide 2 by 3. So you guys cannot reduce the equation. So a couple things you guys have to remember here, or you have to notice. Let me just put a box here for the answer. One is you guys get rid of the fractions. Okay, so you multiply by the lowest common denominator. So after you get rid of the fractions, you check your a value. And if you guys don't remember your a value, you really have to know your a value is the one with the x. Let me just label that for you guys. A is the one with the x, B is the one with the y, and C is your constant on the other side. Constant doesn't have a variable. So your a value has to be positive. If it's negative, you just multiply by negative 1. But you have to multiply the whole thing by negative 1 if you multiply a by a negative. So my answer is 3x minus 2y equals negative 6. A is 3, B is negative 2, and C is negative 6. Okay, so now we are ready to actually graph the equation using the x and the y-intercepts when it is in standard form. Now, once again, let me emphasize this so you understand what's happening with the graphs. We are not using a t-table like the previous video, the first part, because we are going to use only 2 points, the x and the y-intercepts. So you don't have to worry about constructing input and output table or a t-table. I need to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So you guys notice that we have 2 different graphs here, or 2 different equations. 2x plus y equals 8, and this is in standard form because the x and the y are in the same side. A is positive, and there's no fractions, so that's good. Over here, it is in standard form because the x and the y are on the same side. A is positive, and we don't have fractions. So when you guys want to graph, let me just zoom into the first one here. First, let's go ahead and find the x-intercept. So I'm going to put here x-int. So that's the first thing. Now to find the x-intercept, you are going to let y equal to 0. Okay, so what that means, you are going to substitute a 0 into the y, and you're going to solve for x. So I'm going to substitute a 0 here. So I have 2x plus 0, so there's the y, equal to 8. Solve for x. I don't need that 0, so I have 2x equals 8. And when you guys divide by 2, this turns into positive 1. X equals 4. So that's my x-intercept. Now, as a coordinate point, I know where it crosses the x-axis at 4, positive 4. But as a coordinate point, you can write it as 4, comma 0. Okay, so that's another way to write down the x-intercept. So let's go ahead and graph that on the coordinate plane. So I already have my coordinate plane here, and I'm going to go to the positive 4. There's the origin, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to make a point right here. The next step is to find the y-intercept. So I'm going to put y-int for the y-intercept. So for the y-intercept, you are going to let x equal to 0. So what that means, you are going to substitute a 0 into the x, and you're going to solve for y. So I'm going to have 2 times, and I'm going to substitute a 0 right there, plus y equal to 8. 2 times 0 is 0, plus y equal to 8. I don't need that 0, so y equals to 8. Now that is the y-intercept. As a coordinate point, you guys have 0, comma 8. Remember that x equal to 0, so that's why you put a 0 here. And we got y equal to 8, so there it is. So now you guys are going to plot the point at positive 8. So from the origin, you guys go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you guys make a point right here, and you connect the points to make your line. So you see the line right there. You guys have your linear graph. A couple things, okay, that I want you guys to notice. I didn't make a t-table. I just have the x-intercept and the y-intercept. I know the y-intercept is at 8, y equals 8, and the x-intercept is at x equals 4. So that's all you need. This is a little bit faster than making a t-table. Now, I want you guys to actually notice something, okay? When you guys solve for the x-intercept and the y-intercept, you don't really have to do all this work. I'm going to show you guys a shortcut for the next example because there's something you can do. You can actually kind of ignore the x when you look for the y-intercept, or you can ignore the y when you're looking for the x-intercept. And it's a little bit faster to find those intercepts. So let's go to the next one here. So I want to graph 4x minus 2y equal to 6. Now the first thing you guys notice is you can actually simplify this equation, okay? Yes, you can. You have 4x minus 2y equal to 6. You can divide everything by 2. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'm going to put it on the side. So when I divide by 2, let me just put an arrow here. I have 4 divided by 2 is 2x minus 2 divided by 2 is 1y. I don't need that 1. It's an invisible 1. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So you actually can divide everything by 2 to simplify the equation. Now you are going to work with this equation here. Now here's the actual tip that I'm going to give you guys. To find your x-intercept, remember that we actually let y equal to 0. In other words, you kind of can ignore the y, because anything times 0, if you substitute a 0, is nothing. So you guys can cover up the y just like this, right there in the equation. Notice what we have. We have 2x equal to 3. So all you have to write down is 2x equal to 3. You divide by 2 to solve for x. So x equals 3 over 2. Now, I know this is a fraction, so I'm going to help you guys when you guys have fractions, but let me write it as an ordered pair, okay? And when you guys actually have fractions and you're trying to graph, it's a lot easier if you guys use mixed numbers. So 3 over 2 as a mixed number is actually 1 and 1/2. So my coordinate points is going to be at 1, 1/2, and 0. Remember that we need to let y equal to 0. How do you graph that on the actual coordinate point? Well, all you do, let me just zoom in here a little bit. You guys are going to go 1 and 1/2 to the right. That's positive 1. So here's the origin, 1 and 1/2. So that's between the 1 and the 2. And you make a point right there. So that's my x-intercept. That's it. That's how you graph when you have fractions. You make it a mixed number, and it's going to help you to find the coordinate point. Now, when you guys want to find the y-intercept, you are going to let x equal to 0. So once again, let me go back here to the equation. When you guys let x equal to 0, you can actually ignore the x. So I'm going to bring down the box here, again, the same box I used before, and I'm going to cover up the x, just like that. So I cover up the 2x, I don't need it because eventually that's going to turn into 0. So notice what we have. We have a negative y equal to 3. So that's why you write down negative y equal to 3. You guys divide by negative 1 because remember we have an invisible negative 1 here and you want to get rid of the negative. Divide by negative 1 over here. So y equal to negative 3. So that's not a mixed number, it's not a fraction. So my y-intercept is at 0 and negative 3. So on the y-axis, here's the origin, 1, 2, 3. You guys make your points right there. So that is the y-intercept. So that's what you can do to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. You guys can ignore the x or the y depending on what you're looking for, and you can cover up. So let me explain that again. Let me put the box on this side right here. So if you guys want to find the x-intercept, you are going to cover up the y because eventually that's going to be 0. So you just cover up the y like this. And whatever you have, you can write it down. In this case, we have a 2x equal to 3. There it is, and you solve for x. When you guys look for the y-intercept, then you guys can cover up the x like this, and you guys write down negative. In this case, we have a negative y equal to 3, negative y equal to 3, and you solve for y. So that's it. That's just another way you guys can solve for the x and the y-intercept. You guys need your line, so you connect the 2 points, and you guys have the linear graph. So this is one form that you guys are learning, the standard form. There's a few ways you guys can actually graph lines, okay? So that's what we're trying to teach you. The first video, I show you guys how to use a t-table, you guys use the inputs to find the outputs. In this video, I'm showing you guys how to use the x and the y-intercepts when you have standard form. Later on, I'm going to show you guys how to use what is called the slope and the y-intercept, which is the slope-intercept form, to graph a linear function. And then we're going to have a point-slope form. So there's a few ways you guys can graph lines. Try not to get confused. In class, make sure you guys know the difference for those 3 forms because it's very important that you understand how to graph linear functions. This is the most basic functions that you guys are starting to learn to graph. Later on, you're going to start having different functions, quadratic functions, cubic functions. You guys have exponential functions, so they can become really challenging. So make sure you guys know the basics. The basic is linear function, and then you guys build your math skills to graph other different types of functions. All right, so this is it for this video. If you guys like my videos, make sure you guys hit that like button, and you guys can also subscribe to my channel. Make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.